Hi, I'm Reverend Dr. Antonia Lucic Gonzalez. Welcome back to my Gal Pastor channel. In my previous video, we learned that romantic theology sits at the intersection of literature and theology, and that it has been legitimized and popularized by the Inklings and through their lasting written legacy. C.S. Lewis, J.R.R. Tolkien, Owen Barfield, and Charles Williams. In words of Williams, romantic theology has for cause and subject those human experiences which are generally termed romantic. Let's review. What are those romantic experiences that we can reflect upon theologically? Relational love of all kinds, nature, art, creativity, and just simply put, wonder. All of those experiences are sometimes called general revelation. Here and now we'll focus on the experience of romantic love, called Valentine's Day. Williams observes that the universality, the intensity, and one might almost say the necessity of romantic love should have always suggested it as a subject for the most profound theological consideration, but not much of our theology has bothered with it. After Williams met and married Florence in the second decade of the 20th century, he decided to address this deficiency in his outlines of romantic theology, but only after he wrote 84 sonnets for her, all published in Silver Stair. Today we'll see how he worked the images and his own experience of romantic love theologically in this short book. I will share with you what appealed to me, and what I share might feel to you a bit unfinished. And that's okay, he kept developing the theory of romantic theology for years in many other works. So don't take this as the creed of romantic theology of marriage, but instead as a product of his baptized imagination, and of course, as I am presenting it to you, also of my interpretation and chosen emphasis. First, clarification of terminology. Williams writes, for convenience sake and in order to avoid too much talk about love, the word marriage is used to cover the whole process of love from its first appearance between two people to its remote end. As a starting point, Williams believes that a Christian marriage is a form of general revelation, and that by means of loving each other, partners in marriage can get to know God. When we experience romantic love in marriage, we experience God. According to Williams, the principles of romantic theology applied to romantic love can be reduced to this simple formula. The identification of love, capital L, with Jesus Christ, and the identification of a marriage with Jesus' earthly life, where he observes that the lifelong interactions of a couple correspond in significance and emotion to the events of Christ's life, as every romance tends to follow more or less the same patterns: ecstasy, rejection, agony, despair, kind of death, and kind of resurrection. What do you think about that? The core presupposition of all of his romantic theology is that love, capital L, equals Jesus Christ. Williams insists that this is not just a metaphor, but that identification is exact, real, and literal, an undisputed spiritual reality. I feel like we've heard this before along the lines, there is a third person in your marriage and it's Jesus, right? But for Williams, the love between two people in marriage is personified. Love is Jesus. How can that be? His response is reduced to a single word, Emmanuel, meaning incarnation, God with us. Romantic theology is therefore first of all a Christology, the unpacking of the ways Christ is really with us in our experience of marital love. Williams writes, if marriage is not Christ, it is either a morality or a natural phenomenon, expanding all the illumination, all those graces, merely for the sake of reproducing the human race. But if marriage is Christ, then indeed Christ is the light that lightens every man that comes into the world. Then indeed our eyes have seen his salvation in and through marriage. So he challenges us today to dare to believe that Emmanuel lives, indeed truly abides, in this city of mortal love. that we call marriage. I think for me this is potentially life-changing imagery if I can keep this vision of Christ as the love that abides in my marriage stored in my heart and remain open to that spiritual reality. Obviously, the romantic theology of Williams reflects an extremely high view of marriage. I find his take inspirational and at times even kind of shockingly elevated. I don't mean to set this up as some sort of a measuring rod for your own relationship, thereby creating more pressure and the resulting sense of failure, but rather sort of help you climb up on a higher plane so that together, even if shortly, we might catch a glimpse of a different, more glorious vision of our life's most important covenant. And then we return back down into the thick of it to work that imagery further with our own baptized imaginations. In conclusion, Charles Williams writes, "There are a myriad of other general revelations, and marriage is not a necessary way of revelation. There may be only a few to whom Jesus communicates himself after this manner in marriage, but that the possibility is always there remains the part of the thesis of romantic theology. In the records of Christian sanctity, there have been celibate saints and married saints. But are there any records of lovers who are also saints in virtue of their consciousness of that love? What, may we not dream of high triumphs of any two lovers who knew that their love was Christ, that their marriage was his life, and pursued him in holy fellowship together?"